In the crisp April air of 2025, the serene meadows of Pahalgam, a picturesque tourist haven in Indian-administered Kashmir, were shattered by gunfire. On April 22nd, a group of militants, later identified as members of the Kashmir Resistance, a splinter group linked to Pakistan-based Lashkar-e-Taiba, attacked a bustling market square. The assault was brutal and indiscriminate, claiming the lives of 26 civilians, 25 Indian tourists and one Nepalese national, and injuring 17 others. The attackers vanished into the rugged Himalayan terrain, leaving behind a trail of blood and terror. India was quick to point the finger at Pakistan, accusing its neighbor of harboring and supporting the perpetrators. The Indian government, led by Prime Minister Narendra Modi, declared the attack an act of war, citing intelligence that linked the militants to training camps in Pakistan-administered Kashmir. Pakistan vehemently denied the allegations, condemning the attack, but insisting that India's accusations were baseless and inflammatory. The stage was set for a confrontation that would push the two nuclear-armed neighbors to the brink of catastrophe. The days following the Pahalgam attack were marked by a rapid deterioration in India-Pakistan relations. On April 23rd, India downgraded diplomatic ties, expelled Pakistani diplomats, and closed the Wagah-Attari border crossing, the only functional land link between the two nations. In a symbolic but severe move, India announced the suspension of the 1960 Indus Waters Treaty, a critical water-sharing agreement that had survived decades of hostility. Pakistan retaliated by suspending trade and threatening to withdraw from the 1972 Simla Agreement, which had established the line of control, LOC, as the de facto border in Kashmir. Tensions simmered along the LOC, with sporadic exchanges of small arms fire reported in Kupwara and Baramulla districts. On May 7th, India launched Operation Sindoor, a series of precision missile strikes targeting 9 alleged terrorist camps in Pakistan and Pakistan-administered Kashmir. The Indian Ministry of Defense claimed the strikes killed over 100 militants, including key figures from Jaish-e-Mohammed and Lashkar-e-Taiba. Among the targets were the Murik headquarters of Lashkar-e-Taiba and the Bahawalpur base of Jaish-e-Mohammed, long suspected of orchestrating attacks in India. Pakistan disputed India's claims, reporting that the strikes hit civilian areas, killing 31 people, including 2 children. In response, on May 10th, Pakistan launched Operation Bunyan Marsoos, Wall of Lead, a retaliatory campaign involving missile and drone attacks on Indian military installations. The Indian Army intercepted a Pakistani Abdali missile over Jaisalmer, but some strikes caused damage to airbases and border posts. The conflict marked a historic first, the large-scale use of kamikaze drones by both sides, a tactic inspired by the Russia-Ukraine war. These one-way drones, cheap and deadly, wreaked havoc along the LOC, escalating the conflict into uncharted technological territory. The international community watched with growing alarm as the two nuclear-armed nations exchanged blows. India, with an estimated 180 nuclear warheads, and Pakistan, with 170, had the potential to unleash unimaginable devastation. The United States, under President Donald Trump, initially adopted a cautious stance. Vice President J.D. Vance, in a Fox News interview on May 8th, described the conflict as none of our business, emphasizing that the U.S. would encourage de-escalation but avoid direct involvement. However, behind the scenes, diplomatic channels were buzzing. The United Kingdom, led by Prime Minister Keir Starmer, and the European Union, represented by High Representative Kaja Kallas, engaged with both nations to urge restraint. China, a close ally of Pakistan, condemned the Pahalgam attack, but called for dialogue, with Foreign Minister Wang Yi expressing hope that both sides would avoid escalation. Iran and Germany also voiced support for de-escalation, with the German Foreign Office describing a ceasefire as a first, important step out of the escalation spiral. In India, the mood was one of defiance. Prime Minister Modi chaired a high-level meeting with Defense Minister Rajnath Singh, External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar, and National Security Advisor Ajit Doval, vowing an uncompromising stance against terrorism. Indian media reported that any future terror attack would be treated as an act of war, raising the stakes for any ceasefire violations. In Pakistan, Celebrations erupted in cities like Lahore and Peshawar, where citizens viewed the retaliatory strikes as a display of national strength. "This is a big day for Pakistan," said Muhammad Fateh, a young man in Lahore. "Our forces responded with strength, and India had no choice but to agree to a ceasefire." On May 10th, after 3 days of intense fighting that claimed over 60 lives, a breakthrough emerged. At 5 p.m. IST, the Directors General of Military Operations, DGMOs, of India and Pakistan held a hotline conversation, agreeing to an immediate and full ceasefire. The agreement stipulated that both sides would halt all military actions, on land, air, and sea, effective immediately. U.S. President Trump announced the ceasefire on his Truth Social platform, claiming credit for a long night of talks mediated by the United States. Secretary of State Marco Rubio and Vice President Vance had engaged with Modi, Pakistani Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif, and other senior officials over 48 hours, according to Rubio's statement. Indian Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri confirmed the ceasefire in a press briefing, emphasizing that the agreement was worked out directly between the two countries. Pakistan's Foreign Minister Ishaq Dar echoed the sentiment, stating, "Pakistan has always strived for peace and security in the region, without compromising on its sovereignty." Both sides agreed to resume talks on May 12th at a neutral location to address broader issues, including the status of the Indus Waters Treaty and the Simla Agreement. The announcement was met with cautious optimism. In Indian-administered Kashmir, residents like Aqib Ahmed, a lawyer from Rajouri, expressed relief but remained wary. "It brought relief, but we won't let our guard down unless guns fall silent tonight," he said. In Pakistan-administered Kashmir, celebrations in Muzaffarabad reflected hopes for lasting peace. The German government and the EU welcomed the truce, with Kallas urging both sides to ensure its durability. The ceasefire, however, proved fragile. Just hours after the agreement, at 7:45 p.m. IST, residents in Jammu reported drone attacks and projectiles lighting up the night sky. By 9 p.m., loud explosions rocked Srinagar, prompting Jammu and Kashmir Chief Minister Omar Abdullah to post on X, "What the hell just happened to the ceasefire?" Explosions heard across Srinagar. Indian air defense systems engaged hostile objects, and red streaks illuminated the sky over Udhampur as drones were intercepted. Vikram Misri held a late-night press conference, accusing Pakistan of repeated violations of the ceasefire. "The armed forces are giving an adequate and appropriate response," he said, calling on Pakistan to address the breaches with seriousness and responsibility. Pakistan's information minister denied the allegations, claiming that India had initiated the skirmishes. A senior Pakistani security source told Reuters that India's actions were provocative, while Indian media reported that the Border Security Force had been authorized to deliver a strong response. In the Akhnur region, heavy shelling erupted, injuring 8 Border Security Force personnel. Local politician Satish Sharma warned residents to stay indoors, posting on social media, "Heavy firing at border, please stay safe." Blackout measures were reimposed in parts of Srinagar, Udhampur, and Punjab districts like Jalandhar and Patiala, which had briefly lifted restrictions after the ceasefire announcement. The Indian Express reported that Punjab's deputy commissioners had acted swiftly to ensure public safety amid the renewed tensions. The brief but intense conflict left deep scars. In Indian-administered Kashmir, families huddled in fear as shells rained down. Saima Kazi, a resident of Surenko near the loch, described the terror of the previous nights. "Last night was like hell. Shells rained till 6:30 a.m. In Pakistan-administered Kashmir, the Neelam Valley bore the brunt of Indian strikes, with homes reduced to rubble. A photograph of a Kashmiri family standing outside their damaged home, projectiles streaking overhead, captured the human toll of the conflict. The economic fallout was significant. India's suspension of the Indus Waters Treaty threatened Pakistan's agriculture, which relied heavily on the Indus River system. Trade suspensions and visa cancellations further strained both economies. Ehsan Malik, CEO of the Pakistan Business Council, noted, "Both Pakistan and India need to lift their large populations on virtually every measure of socio-economic development." A ceasefire will help both governments focus on this priority. As dawn broke on May 11th, the situation remained tense but quieter. No major incidents were reported overnight, and both sides appeared to recommit to the ceasefire. The planned talks on May 12th loomed large, with the international community urging both nations to address underlying issues, particularly the Kashmir dispute. Shujan Awaz, a fellow at the Atlantic Council's South Asia Center, suggested that the Indus Waters Treaty would be a key topic, but only after a decent interval to allow both governments to claim domestic victories. In India, the ceasefire was met with mixed emotions. Sanjay Dwivedi, whose son Shubham was killed in the Pahalgam attack, expressed support for the government's actions. The Indian army destroyed 9 terrorist bases. We have faith in PM Narendra Modi. We want terrorism eradicated. In Pakistan, Senator Sherry Raymond praised the military's professionalism, calling the ceasefire a moment of national resolve. The conflict underscored the volatile nature of India-Pakistan relations, rooted in the unresolved Kashmir dispute since the 1947 partition. The use of drones marked a new chapter in their rivalry, raising fears of future escalations. As the two nations prepared for talks, the world held its breath, hoping that the ceasefire would hold and pave the way for lasting peace. On May 12th, delegations from India and Pakistan met at a neutral location, mediated by the United Nations. The talks were tense but productive, focusing on confidence-building measures like hotline contacts and border flag meetings. Both sides agreed to restore the Indus Waters Treaty and resume limited trade, but the Kashmir issue remained a sticking point. For the people of Kashmir, caught between the ambitions of two nations, the ceasefire offered a fleeting respite. As Aqib Ahmed put it, peace is a dream we dare to hope for, but only time will tell if it lasts. The India-Pakistan War of 2025, though brief, was a stark reminder of the stakes in South Asia. The ceasefire, fragile as it was, represented a triumph of diplomacy over destruction. But in the shadow of nuclear arsenals and unresolved grievances, the path to peace remained fraught with peril.